Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast. Today is Wednesday, December the 11th? Do I have that right? I'm forgetting the day. Wednesday, December the 11th. I'm Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Matthew Paris, and Jeff Duncan. Coming at you later than usual in the day because we thought, you know what, let's wait until after Saints practice. Let's let Darren Rizzy speak. Let's let him give us the lowdown on the Saints quarterback decision. It was a very strategic decision that paid off in absolutely no decision at all. We do not know who the Saints quarterback will be Sunday against the Washington Commanders. We really are no closer to knowing who it will be than we were a couple of days ago, Matt.
I guess I think we're a little closer.
You think we're okay? Well, we'll talk about it, but it honestly could still be any of the. Well, there's now 4 quarterbacks on the roster if you count Ben DiNucci, who they added to the practice squad this week. But it could be any of the other 3. Still have not technically ruled out Derek Carr. I think we all agree it's very unlikely that he could play, but we'll talk about that. And then it comes down to Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener, and neither of them has been ruled out. So that's what today's show is going to be about. We're also going to touch on kind of the big news today around the football world, and that is that Bill Belichick has been hired by the University of North Carolina, according to reports, and just kind of react to that and how it may affect the Saints. So Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to Bank Anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. We're going to take a break, then we'll dig into the Saints quarterback decision and how it apparently is still ongoing right after this.
Ooh, I see at least 3 of them in there.
3 what?
Possums, big rats, I don't know.
Clarify big.
You're gonna have to gut it.
How much is that gonna cost? Maybe I should just move.
Maybe.
Is that your van?
Hi, strawberry mango. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Thank you. I'll take another one.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
All right, kind of breaking down this quarterback decision, guys. Matt, I'm going to start with you because you said maybe we got a little bit closer to knowing who the starting quarterback may be for the Saints on Sunday, and we're going to go through each guy. But I guess just where are you leaning? What are you thinking?
I would lean Haener, and I've gone back and forth on this, but I think it makes the most sense. Just Rattler, given a tough set of circumstances, but he was benched near the end of that, and Haener is still a young guy that they have to evaluate, and I think they would go that direction. That's more of just an educated guess, but I thought it was kind of telling today that one, Darren Rizzy admitted they were trying to play mind games with Washington, but 2, he didn't say that both quarterbacks received first team reps. It was just reps, and yes, this is a competition. That's what Rizzy called it, but he was trying to say that I just think they're going to go with Haener. I think this is all kind of a smoke screen, and I think they're just dragging it out to drag it out.
Yeah, I think it's probably somewhere yesterday in the offices they sat around and said, well, we're probably not going to have an edge at quarterback against Jaden Daniels, right, with whoever starts. But the one little edge we could have is the element of surprise. So why give that away? So let's just play this game, which normally I don't think they would do. But in this situation, it does make sense to play coy. And I agree with you. I think when you go back and look at it, I think I'd forgotten just how one-sided those games were when Rattler started. I mean, all 3 of them were really decisive defeats. And I think there's a reason that Haener was the backup. I know it's convoluted in their explanations of it, but he hasn't had a chance to start yet. He's never started. So there's probably an element of let's see what we got in this guy too. But let's not give that away to the Commanders. I totally agree with Matt. I think there's a little mind game going on, but in the end, I think we'll see Jazzy Jake out there.
For me, I think it was just the fact that Haener has been like the number 2 guy most of the, all this time. So I just feel like he's next in line. And I mean, And I know they say the reason is it depends on what the game plan is, but I just think that, I think it's Haener's
But
turn.
Tuesday's the day that
And we didn't talk to a quarterback today, and we normally do on Wednesdays, which
Tuesday's the day you figure out what the game plan is going to be. They have to have an idea of what they're gonna do.
And Rizzy even said our game plan won't be that much different for Haener or Rattler because they're pretty similar in their style of play.
Well, I think that's true.
What I don't know how much of an advantage you're deriving from this, but maybe we can talk a little bit about Carr and start there and then go backward into the discussion of Haener or Rattler. So Derek Carr was seen in the players' parking lot today with a brace on his hand. It's obviously injured. Darren Rizzy said it was still swollen. It's broken, but it is his non-throwing hand. So if they can get the swelling to go down, the pain management, he's also got this deal with the concussion, although it sounds like to me Rizzy said it's progressing. Maybe if it was just the concussion, we might see Carr out there on Sunday. Do you guys think there is any chance Derek Carr plays Sunday in the Dome, or is this just completely a smokescreen?
0 to 5. I mean, I don't. I'd put it at virtually none.
I'm going to say 0 to 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question would be more valid if this team were fighting for a playoff berth. There's a 1% chance for them to make the playoffs. So, and the other thing is, I mean, I think the way I read that concussion, I think that's still a very big hurdle for him to clear. I don't think he would play with this concussion normally either. I don't even know if he will. So I think it's them playing games right now. Look, when Ian Rappaport comes out and reports what he reported on Monday, he's getting that straight from the agent. And that agent's telling him it's probably a long-standing relationship with him. They're very rarely going to have bad information on something like that. So
if you're getting that from the agent, and then Rizzy comes out like he did on Monday and say, that might be a little bit false, so pump the brakes on that. Is that just the Saints coming to Rizzy and saying, why don't you make it seem like there's a chance that Derek could play? And that it goes back into these mind games.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is. I mean, like Jeff mentioned, I mean, they just any advantage you can get. I mean, I don't know what the spread is, whatever. But
7.5.
I mean, the Saints probably aren't. I don't think any of us are going to pick the Saints. Well,
I might.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind. Scratch that. But the chances of them winning aren't great with Haener or Rattler. So I think you do have to just throw something out there to, maybe it makes Washington spend an extra time doing this, preparing for Derek Carr, and that gives you an advantage. So I think that's what they're doing here.
Yeah, I don't know. The Commanders are smart enough. They can see like the rest of us that they see Ian Rappaport's reporting. Matt, they know. I mean, how much practice time are you really spending on one guy versus the other? Maybe one extra film session or something.
Yeah, it's baloney. It's malarkey. It's just such a sham, man. It reminds me of Jonathan Gannon before the Cardinals played the Commanders. Was like hiding up until the very last minute whether it was going to be Josh Dobbs or Clayton Tune, and that's even sadder.
That. Yeah.
In this
case,
it
matter?
No, it did not matter. The Commanders won pretty handily. I mean, the game was close in the first half, but they pulled away at the end. It doesn't matter. Football coaches think they're, I don't know, man. I actually.
I can tell it struck a nerve.
It really does bother me. I mean, I know that's the way it's going to be, but what's the point? You're 5-8.
Here's what I've always thought about that, and I totally agree with you. I think Bill Belichick started it, and because Bill Belichick won all these years, people correlated. Oh well, he's doing it, but I don't think it has anything to do with why Bill Belichick was winning. All that subterfuge and
then at the college level, Saban took it even further. Which we're going to talk about Bill Belichick in college football later in the show. But, I agree with you. At least Darren Rizzy was somewhat self-aware when he was asked, are are you doing this so that the media and the Washington Commanders don't know, or are you doing this because the team truly doesn't know? And he said yes.
Yes.
So I think it was Brett Martell who asked him at the AP, and Brett followed up and said, well, are you answering yes to the first part or the second part? And he just said yes, and yes. So I think Rizzy knows what he's doing. You know, he's pretty open as far as that goes, and so it's somewhat refreshing. But I mean,
and he's an open football coach. Like that's why I actually enjoy talking to him. But I also respect what Dennis Allen did when Rattler started. I mean, they didn't drag this out with Rattler. They said, yeah, it's Rattler now.
Right.
And they got it over and done with. And is there an actual competitive advantage? That stuff is so overblown to me.
It's not a disadvantage, though. So I think that's
right.
kind of
why not?
Yeah.
And I think in this situation, it's a little different, you know. I think in this situation, they have very little other advantage they've got. I mean, there's just nothing else to. And I think they probably said, like, why do we announce it now? We don't have to. Let's just play coy and act like there's a competition. And
oh, no, are we facing the quarterback with the 58 completion percentage or the 49.2? Like,
I'm with you.
Okay, so let's dig into the competition then. Spencer versus Jake. Do you all think that the decision has been made on Airline Drive? Do they know who will start on Sunday as we speak?
Yeah,
I think so.
100%. I guarantee they have.
You hesitated.
No, I think we all think that it'll be Haener, and I think most of that is just based on the fact that Rattler had his chance, and I would just think the other guys. That's what I'm basing it on. I don't think Haener's better than Rattler. I don't know if either one of them are, you know.
But the idea of an actual competition going out there, like in Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practice, hey, you split reps with the ones, you split reps with the ones. Let's see who plays better, and then we'll pick one. To me, that's counterproductive because what you want whoever's going to start to get all of the reps.
But here's the thing: he's saying that, but you know, the media is allowed to watch, basically stretch and a little bit. Like we have no idea who's getting the bulk of the reps. We're not seeing that, so they could easily be getting that quarterback ready, and they probably are. But we're not seeing that now. The players will know who it is, but they're probably under specific orders to not say anything about it.
And players over there are very good at following specific
But I would
orders.
say this. I definitely think this would be true because they're two quarterbacks in similar experience and similar probably ability. I do think that there's a very real chance that if Haener starts and he starts bombing, that they do go to Rattler pretty quick. So I do think both of them could play a lot in this situation, sort of like what happened with Rattler before.
I completely agree, and I wouldn't even blame the Saints if they wanted to start Rattler again this time around. I mean, you have an offensive line that's healthy now. That would be a better chance, I think a more fair chance to evaluate him. But I think Haener also kind of just deserves the shot to see what he can do.
Okay, so perfect segue. You start to make it. Let's do the case for Spencer Rattler. Rattler started 3 games. He was 0-3 as a starter. He had one really, really good quarter, which was aided by some big defensive and special teams plays against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But really in the whole first half of that game, I would say he legitimately looked good. Like people were excited. It looked like, man, they might really have something here, even if he's not quite as good as Derek Carr now. He's shown potential. And then it was frankly pretty awful after that. He was not good in the second half against Tampa Bay. He was not good in the Thursday night game against Denver. And he was not good in LA against the Chargers to the point where he gets benched in the fourth quarter, late third, early fourth quarter, and Jake Haener comes in. So, but Matt, that's an interesting point. He did not have his starting offensive line at that point. Rashid Shaheed got hurt in that stretch. Of course, he's hurt now, as is Chris Olave. So it's a different situation. But I would say the argument for Rattler is he showed just enough, and now let's go see him behind a healthy offensive line and get a more full evaluation. Yeah,
and I think the other thing, too, is that this offensive staff didn't pick Haener. They picked Rattler. That would also maybe be the argument for I think that's what factored in the first time around is that, you know, Clint Kubiak and them got to weigh in with, we like this kid and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, and like I would say this, and not to take anything away from Rattler at all, because he made some really nice throws in that period, but there was also a little bit of a surprise element that they had to work with against the Bucs. And they were doing a lot of bootlegs, a lot of rollouts, and it was working. And then Tampa Bay adjusted, set their edges wide, took that away, and then it was Katie barred the door. It was over. And then once that surprise element was taken out, of how they were going to play with him, and everybody saw it, and everybody had tape on it. We saw, I think, what it would look like for most rookie fifth-round draft picks thrown in against NFL defenses. That's good ones too. I mean, Bucks, Broncos, Chargers. Those are good defenses.
And that's a good point too. Those were all teams that, if the season ended today, would be playoff teams. They're all more than 50-50 to make the playoffs. Like, at the time, it looked like that was almost a weaker patch of the schedule, but it definitely was not. So I think that's anything else for Rattler, Rod, that you would throw in there and say, hey, this is a reason they could go with him.
I mean, to me, my main thing would just be the fact that he didn't have, and I don't know which line. I know Eric McCoy obviously wasn't there, but
Cesar Ruiz was out for at least the first two. He might have come back for the Chargers game.
He did.
Yeah, so he was out for at least the first two of those. Lucas Patrick feels like he's been in and out of the lineup the whole year. So
yeah, so I mean, if you want to maybe get a better gauge of his decision making, I guess, and without having to face so much pressure, I mean, you might give him another shot. But outside of that, I just think it's Haener's turn to get that.
Okay, so now we flip over to the case for Jake Haener, and you guys have made it in real simple, logical terms of, well, give him a chance. He hasn't had his chance. Rattler had his chance. Now it's Haener's turn. And to me, that all makes sense. Is there any other reason why on the field, because I kind of have one idea, but I'm curious to see what you guys say, on the field, why Haener might give you a better chance to win Sunday than Rattler?
I do feel like he's a little bit more accurate. I know I bagged on his completion percentage being under 50 like a few minutes ago, but a lot of those appearances, to be fair to him, were in garbage relief time. He's really had only one actual chance to play this season in an extended stretch, and that was against the Chargers.
And that was comeback mode.
Yeah, and he led a good drive, threw the ball, and had a touchdown to Cedric Wilson. So I do think there are promising traits there, just like there are with Rattler, and I think it's worth finding out.
And I think I wasn't there the first week or so, week and a half, but I think he clearly by the end of camp had won the backup job just when I was watching it. Like, he was really good situationally. I think he gives them a little moxie, probably from having more experience of knowing how to run the 2-minute drill and things like that probably give them a little more comfort. And it's going to be interesting to see, because I think the limitations right now, the passing attack, we saw that against the Giants. We haven't really talked about that, but, the Giants played a lot of like bear defense and a lot of the stuff that the Eagles did and really shut down the Saints running game. And that's going to be the key for whoever's in there, Haener or Rattler. Inexperienced quarterback, they need this running game to work. If they can't run the ball, both of them are in trouble.
Yeah, that actually leads to my argument for Haener. But first, I did want to. You said he led a late touchdown drive against the Chargers, and I'd forgotten about this, but it was actually against the Broncos. Rattler left the game injured.
Yes, it was against,
and it was against the Broncos.
Yes,
when Haener came in against LA, he did lead a field goal drive.
Okay,
but yeah, I'm not correcting you as much as I'm just trying to recall for everyone. He did come in to the end of both of those games and lead scoring drives, but it wasn't overly impressive. Just like he wasn't in the couple snaps he got in New York or Kansas
probably
City.
Working against shell coverage and
Yeah. So my argument is obviously, if you're the Saints and you're looking at, we have to win this game to stay alive and whatever Lloyd Christmas chance we have of making the playoffs, how do we do that? Well, you've got to play ball control. You've got to run the ball. And then the third thing is you just absolutely have to limit mistakes. And to me, Haener seems slightly more likely to do that. Like, we saw Rattler get pretty loose with the ball. Rod, I mean, do you agree with that? Is that is that fair to say?
Really
and even
point.
in preseason, I think he had some fumbles
Yep.
I mean, he just
it's the Cardinals.
He has those issues, and this team can't afford to make any mistakes. Really, I mean, this is kind of where they are. And I think whichever quarterback starts, I think they probably have a short hook anyway. I mean, you got to go out there and play well. If you turn the ball over, you're probably going to get replaced in the game, I would imagine.
And maybe I'm reading too much into one play, but I will say Haener got sacked at the end of that Giants game. And I actually didn't mind him taking that sack because it forced the Giants to call their final timeout. It's better than forcing a ball down and turning it over when you have a lead. Just don't turn it over, take the sack, make them use a timeout. That ended up being a big deal that they didn't have that last timeout. So maybe I'm giving him credit where credit isn't due because it was just a busted play and he took a sack. But he does seem to have a little bit more of that situational awareness like you're talking about, Jim.
No. Oh, well,
Well, either one of you, yeah.
The other thing is, I think Haener is probably better. Now, McCoy playing helps a lot because McCoy can help set protections, but I would imagine Haener's a little more experienced at, seeing potential pressure packages, and Rattler really struggled with that, which is understandable for a guy with as little experience as he had. But people were able to, especially the Broncos, I remember guys were coming free because they weren't getting set with the protections right, and that leads to inevitably a mistake or two here or there.
He willingly took that sack, by the way. That's what I was going to jump in and add. Is he said after the game that, yeah, I could have maybe forced one to Juwan, but what's the benefit of that? Like, he catches it out of bounds or it's an incompletion. Like, there was no use throwing it, so he wanted them to burn. So, yeah, he willingly took that sack.
And that's not to say Spencer Rattler wouldn't have made that play. We don't know in the same situation, but he just seems a little bit looser with the ball, a little more gunslinger, like, hey, I'm going to go be a hero than Haener, who I don't know if mature is the right word, but he just sort of seems to be a little more aware in the situation.
Well, you made a great point. I think, the only turnover that I think they've had, I don't know if they've had a fumble, but the only interception Carr has thrown since he came back from injury was that one against the Giants. It was effectively a punt in a lot of ways. But I think internally they said, look, our margin for error is 0 right now. We cannot turn it over. And I think that's easy to overlook what Carr's been doing as far as protecting the ball, not taking a lot of sacks, and not turning it over, because they know without their top receivers, without Taysom Hill, this offense is pretty limited, and they just cannot afford any mistakes.
Okay, so we expect the answer Friday, right? I think that's what Rizzy said, is that they're going to take this up to Friday. And by NFL regulations, they do have to have a quarterback speak to the media during the week. And I guess at that point, they've got to kind of reveal their hand and hope that's late enough for whatever subterfuge they're trying to pull off here that the Commanders won't.
Well, by that time, the Commanders will have installed all their defensive.
And then they'll panic when they find out
They
that
will.
Jake
They might
Haener
call
is
the
starting.
game off. Wouldn't shock me if they just stayed home. Said, this isn't fair.
Jaden Daniels against Jake Haener. You expect us to play this game?
Right.
All right. So that's kind of what we're thinking. We're all leaning Jake Haener. We'll find out for sure on Friday. We're going to have our Friday podcast before that, which will be interesting. But I guess
We'll just tape two versions.
if you're listening, it's like writing a game story. You got to have your Haener version and your Rattler version.
All right.
Which is that's kind of what Riz is doing anyway. You got to have him prepare for.
That's right. He's making
right.
us. He's making us spend extra time watching film and everything. No, I think we'll probably treat it like it's going to be Haener, but ultimately, what we're saying here is, on the field, does it make that much difference? I don't know that it does.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, Mr. Sports Betting Line Czar, do you think the line will move either way?
I do not. The line has been kind of bouncing between 7 and 7.5 all week as it is.
Oh, God.
Maybe somebody's taken a 0.5 point away for Rattler or Haener or something, but I don't know. By the way, the look-ahead line was 3. So that's about the difference between Carr and one of these guys is about 4.5 points.
Feels about right. Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at. I don't know. Well, look, we're going to record the podcast, and I think we're probably safe saying no matter who the starter is, the game plan is what we talked about. You're going to try to run the ball. You're going to try to control the clock, maybe hit some play action shots. Because if you fall behind, and Washington's run defense is not great, but if you fall behind and you have to pass, you're probably in trouble whether the quarterback is Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, or Derek Carr against that offense.
I'll say this: if Haener or Rattler leads them to a win in this game, it'll be legendary in a lot of ways.
It'll be. Are you?
It'll
you
be
giving
what-
away, you giving away your pick?
It'll be what Kellen Moore did 2 weeks. Not Kellen Moore. Cooper Rush. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, for the cow, yeah. Sure.
Did a few weeks ago.
Jason Garrett on Thanksgiving for the Cowboys against the Packers, I think it was. Did it one year as a third string, so it can happen. But I'll tell you what, that's going to do our quarterback indecision segment. We're going to take a break, and we will come back and talk Bill Belichick on this podcast right after this. All right, welcome back to the Saints Insider Indecision Podcast, Week 15, 2024. Legendary Jake Haener versus Spencer Rattler discussion is over. But speaking of legendary, our Associated Grocers segment is our transactions segment. Join the Associated Grocers team and help support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. And that is that Bill Belichick has been hired by the University of North Carolina, a 3-year, $30 million deal for Belichick, who did not get an NFL job last offseason. Reportedly wanted one, didn't really get any offers. I know the Falcons were dabbling in that. They interviewed him, I think. But he went into the media. Actually, I think has done a pretty good job in the media from what I've seen, Rod. Now he goes into college. Strange fit to me. I never thought of him as a college coach, but here we are.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest surprise for most of us. We just didn't know if he'd want to, especially with the way college football has changed now with the NIL and transfer portal. Like, does he really want to deal with that? But I guess that's kind of
maybe he just wants $30 million.
Yeah, that helps, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think we know he knows football. He'll do well. I watched one of his interviews the other day, and he was talking about his plan of kind of making this more like an NFL type thing, like getting guys ready for the NFL. And, you know, I think that'll be a good selling point when you're trying to recruit some guys. So, you know, we'll see how it works out for him.
Yeah, Bill O'Brien's up at Boston College. I think he took like a 4-8 team into a 7-5 team this year. Did a pretty good job. So there's some precedent for it. Matt, it just is going to be weird to see Bill Belichick on Saturdays instead of Sundays.
It is, yeah. I actually think this NIL era actually kind of helps him in terms of, you know, you can turn over the roster faster. You can get your guys in. You don't have to load up for all right, I'm going to be here in 4 years, 5 years. You can just get hired guns and try and compete right away. And I think that'll help them because there will be, like, someone out there. There will be kids out there who will say, wow, this is Bill Belichick. I want to play for this guy. Like, as tough as his reputation is, and maybe whether that actually fits with this new era of player, that there are going to be players out there who know what they're signing up for and can get him. And so I don't mind him going to college. I actually think this is much more revealing on the NFL side that no team wanted Belichick and he took the job now. Like I think he realized that his market
That's a great point.
was not going to be what it was. There's 3 vacancies right now. Apparently, he hadn't heard from any of them, and so he saw what was going to happen and decided to take a college job. I don't blame him for that.
And I think he's going to be very similar probably to Brian Kelly at LSU, Mac Brown, who's replacing. You know, that role is going to be more like a CEO running the program. He's going to hire coordinators. His son, I think, is going to be the defense coordinator. And I also think he's probably setting his son up for down the road. I think there's a little fatherly love there going on, trying to set him up. But I don't think it's going to be a traditional how you would see a college head coach run a program.
You know what's scary? You
Coach
say,
Prime's similar. You know?
you say that these kids and Bill Belichick enters their living room and they're going to go, wow, I can be coached by Bill Belichick. Most of these kids who are like recruits in the upcoming cycle were like 10 the last time Belichick won a Super Bowl already. Like we're already to that point where after a couple of years, he's going to be ancient.
That's what I was thinking when whoever said that.
Well, I meant more from like a graduate transfer standpoint, but yeah. Like,
and I mean, I still think some of them will know who he is, and he could certainly make the case. I mentioned Bill O'Brien. Like Belichick's obviously more established than Bill
everybody
O'Brien.
knows who Bill Belichick is.
And
man.
you can go into a living room and say, but I'm saying a 16-year-old kid.
They know who he is.
They probably know who he is, but a 14-year-old kid who will be recruiting in 2 years may not. I mean, like my sons are 12 and 9, and I don't think they really know who he is. So,
well, then what are you doing?
yeah,
as a
time
father?
to crush the tape.
What kind of
Come
father
on.
I mean,
are you?
they know who Kyle Shanahan is, and they know who
They know Coach Prime.
they know Coach Prime as the coach of Colorado. They don't know.
Greatest coach in NFL history.
They probably know the name, but I'm not even sure. I just
And
don't
they're
think he'd
also
make that much of
12
an impression.
too.
That's what I'm saying.
9.
Okay, from a Saints perspective, was Bill Belichick ever possibly a candidate here for the head coaching job?
No. That's what's interesting about this, though, is I do think now if another team that's going to be, and I think the Giants' job is going to open probably, I think that's one job that might have been potentially for Belichick going back there. But I don't think the other ones were good fits. So I think Matt's spot on. I think he looked around the landscape and said, well, I want to coach, so this isn't a bad gig. But I do think it takes out, it creates more competition for the Saints because one of those teams that could have hired Belichick now isn't. And there's going to now be a little more competition there because I don't think the Saints were ever going to be interested, one, because of the money it was going to take to hire him, and two, he, as big an autocrat as Sean Payton was, he's times 10, and that isn't going to fit with the way they want to run things.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, let's just throw out Aaron Glenn since he might be the most common guy mentioned for the Saints. If the Giants also want Aaron Glenn and now Bill Belichick's not a candidate for them, and they maybe have a little bit more money or a little bit more stable salary cap situation a little bit than the Saints, then maybe that sways Aaron Glenn to go somewhere else. I don't know. That's
the way I look at it, yeah. Like now you might – a guy you might have been able to get, it's going to be a little more difficult now because there's going to be more – because I think – and look, there's always going to be one surprise opening. There almost always is. One you're not thinking about. Somebody retires, you don't think, or Sean McVay walks away. It's stuff like that happens. So I think there'll be a few more openings that come along. I don't know if that's going to open. I think my guy's going to hang on.
Just listening to Jerry the other night, though.
Pick him go to the Super Bowl again next year.
My guy McCarthy's hanging on. And if not, maybe he'll come here and be the offense coordinator here.
Saints fans, Associated Grocers is hiring. If you're looking to join a team dedicated to supporting independent grocers, apply today. Your future starts here. One question to end here on the Saints Insider. Does Darren Rizzy, we're talking about this head coaching job, you kind of grade him on a curve now, right? Like if he could pull off an upset of the Commanders, the Packers, or something with Jake Haener at quarterback, like you got to give him a few bonus points for that, I feel like, right?
I have another question. Did the Saints need a game-winning blocked field goal to beat the Giants?
They did.
Okay, then.
You answered my question with a question?
Yes. No, but I think if he can beat Washington with Haener or Rattler, I think that does kind of.
Yeah, it does. I'm being cynical for being cynical sake.
Listen, is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sense. I get it.
Let's slow down a little bit and wait to see, I guess, is what I would say.
Well, and the flip side is if they lose, there's also sort of like, well, I mean, who would have won that game? Like, Bill Belichick probably wouldn't have won that game with Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener at quarterback. But I do think probably just optically, if Derek Carr didn't play again and they finish 1-3 or something, that's probably it for Rizzy, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean.
No matter the situation.
Yeah, he would need to. We talked about winning out, making the playoffs, something like miraculous to happen, and I just don't see it. I think there are qualities he has that make him a very good football coach. I just long term. You kind of need to reset things a little bit. You just look at Washington. Like, they cleaned house, brought in people, they gutted, like, the roster, and they are much better off for it. I don't know it's going to be a dramatic teardown here, but I just think a fresh approach is a little bit needed.
I don't think the wins and losses are that important in the Rizzy evaluation. I mean, they know what they've got in him, and there is – Matt's 100% right. I think they need a breath of fresh air, but there'll be another podcast down the road where we talk about that stuff. But they do lean towards familiarity, people they're comfortable with. I mean, I can still go back. I know you're going to ring the bell, but like when Peyton was coaching and he got suspended that year.
Just Bill Parcells is the bell.
Well, that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
He had a year where he was going to be out, and he wanted to bring in Parcells. And Parcells was going to do it, and they did not want any part of that. They being Mickey Loomis in the front office, because another autocrat, and I think they were intimidated by him, and they didn't know him, so they like familiarity. So what did they do? They patched it together with Joe Vitt and Aaron Cromer, and that season was a disaster. I think Bill Parcells would have gotten a lot more out of that situation than how they did it. But they preferred the familiarity than the unfamiliar.
I guess what I'm saying is what Darren Rizzy needs if he's going to have a chance at the permanent job is a statement. And going like 6-1 or something and making a run at the playoffs is a statement. But another way to make it is, think so. Holy cow, you beat the Washington Commanders with Jake Haener at quarterback.
I think Mickey Loomis isn't making that decision whether he wins or not. I really don't. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think in the court of public opinion, maybe the fans get behind him and that helps him a little bit. The way they make decisions sometimes on their on drive, it certainly doesn't hurt. But I don't think they're looking at. I mean, they know what they've got in him right now. You know what I'm saying?
That's true. That's true. But I do think the court of public opinion matters a little bit for a franchise that needs to sell tickets and needs to keep people engaged.
You also need to see whether the players are engaged down the stretch. Like, I think his approach has been really refreshing for players, and everyone likes Darren Rizzy and they've bought in. But the sign of whether they're playing hard and whether that translates to victories, like that's where the victories I think matter is how hard do the players play? Like, are they paying attention to those details that they weren't under Dennis Allen to actually get them? And that would build the case for Darren Rizzy staying is, they're improving in these areas.
Yeah,
paying attention to those details. That's where the wins matter.
I agree, but I think the front office is going to look at it and go, well, they could be doing all the details all they want, but they don't have Derek Carr, Taysom Hill, and I think they're going to look at that.
Yep.
So I think we're probably all agreeing here.
Yeah.
It's more about the process, how the team's responding to him. Are they buying in? Are they still playing hard?
But are you saying you need to look beyond the results?
A little bit.
Okay. just making sure.
But I mean, look, last year that's what got Antonio Pierce the job in the Raiders. And hasn't played out.
They also had that statement though. They beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day and smoked cigars in the locker room and all that stuff.
But I'm saying it hasn't worked out that well.
No,
you're
right.
Run.
But going to Lambeau and winning on a Monday night, I mean, that gets you to 4 wins. I mean,
it
I
would
think you
have
get to
some
6.
oomph
They
behind
might
it.
carry him off the field if they do that. Like I could see them like Hank Stram and Super Bowl IV carrying him off.
No, but I think 6-2. I think you. I mean, I agree with what Jeff is saying, but I do think there's a record that you have to think a little bit harder about the decision. If you've already decided you don't want them, I think if you go 6-2, you might be like, oh, you know what, we gotta seriously look.
Yeah, I mean, if you go 6-2 and then you bring in somebody else who's underwhelming, people will be like, why didn't we just keep the guy who wins 6-2?
Yeah.
I mean, there's an element of that too. So, okay, that's, as you said, a discussion for another day, but a nice little tangent to end this show on. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the like button, share with your friends, all of that good stuff. We appreciate you all. Appreciate our sponsors, Bank Plus and Associated Grocers, and our producer, Norman Bell. For Rod Walker, Matthew Paris, and Jeff Duncan, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching The Saints Insider.